Yeah, well,
what's going on, Rob?
Oh, it smells like a fart in here.
It's probably Jim farts.
No, that
a
was
lot.
actually the eggs. If I farted, I'd tell you it was the eggs.
And then maybe some farts
That's
earlier.
what it is. It's
It
an
is the egg
fart.
smell. You know, it wasn't a gasser this
Hey,
morning.
how are you, man? Sit down.
Good to see you, Rob.
Probably not the way I should have come in. Hi, guys.
How are you?
I
No, that's
appreciate
fine.
I appreciate the honesty. I don't like it when guests come in here and they act like they don't smell farts.
The
'cause-
huge, stinky ass
Yeah,
fart.
the studio never smells good. It's really off-putting for guests, and everybody like ignores it. They go Hollywood on us.
Yeah, that was the.
Not you though.
No way, man. You're going to get the straight scoop from
You're
me.
the genuine article.
So you're. We had Michael Pena in. Was it yesterday or
2 days
ago? 2
ago.
days ago.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Talking about this.
He's awesome. He's a
Yeah,
good
he
dude.
is. Who do you play in this?
I play Colonel Max Bowers, who is the commanding officer of 3rd Battalion 5th Special Forces Group.
By the way, 12 strong is what this is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's about this group. And interesting story about that is the story takes place in October of 2001. I was attached to this unit in November of 2001. I was a captain at the time, and I reported directly to Lieutenant Colonel Max Bowers, who I now play in the movie. So I'm playing my old boss. in
Well,
the
so
movie.
you basically.
That's insane.
Now, did you like him?
Yeah, I did. I mean, as much as you like a boss, you know what I
Yes.
mean. He was my boss. But he was good at his job. He knew what he was doing, and he cared about his men. So that's pretty much all you can ask for.
Where was this? For November of 2001. If
Yeah.
you're in the Marine Corps, you're over there.
Yeah.
What were you doing in the Marines over there? Because that was before technically Bush had the invasion or any of that stuff, right?
Well, yeah, we were still. I mean, it was brand new. Like 9/11 just happened 2 months prior to when I got there. So I was actually doing. I was sent from Central Command. I was actually here in New York, actually on 9/11. Pursuing comedy and acting. I was doing sketch and improv down at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. But I was in the reserves at that time because I left active duty in 2000. So on 9/11, my unit is a reserve unit here in Manhattan. We're like the only reserve unit in Manhattan. So I was activated the night of September 11th. September 12th, I reported to Ground Zero and started working on the rubble piles, moving buckets of rubble in the bucket brigades.
Is it a good excuse at all when you're cleaning up after 9/11 to tell people that you have to go do your improv sketch?
Yeah, I got a sense.
I can only be here for 2 hours because I gotta go.
I got to go knock out a tight 5, guys.
Yeah.
Super tight over at the piano room. Yeah. So that's how. So I got called back, and then, but only for 30 days. So at September 30th, my orders were over. But I volunteered to go back on active duty. Central Command picked me up. I had a high security clearance for my job. I had a green badge, which is like top secret with a skiff clearance. So not many people had that.
What's a
get
skip
that?
clearance?
It's like an eyes only type thing. You get to go behind some doors that some other people don't.
What job did you have that you can?
How'd you get that?
And what was the job?
I was public affairs, civil affairs. So I kind of my graduate degree is in public administration, working with municipalities, civic leaders, hearts and minds, that kind of stuff. Working with the media.
What
was
level?
The public affairs side.
What level was above you that you couldn't see? Like there had to be a guy above you who goes, I have this level clearance. Like you had a green badge, you said?
Yeah.
What's a higher level than that you were not permitted to see?
I don't know. There is clearly there is, but I don't know what it was.
That's
Okay.
how high level it is. You don't even know what color it is.
Exactly.
Like, that's-
Exactly. But no, there's definitely higher levels. Clearly, there's clearly higher levels. But for my job, I had a pretty high level. So I knew they were going to need people. It was the point, and I knew that I had stuff that they would need. So I volunteered to go back on active duty. I was picked up November 10th, November 17th. I reported to Central Command. November 30th, I was in Afghanistan.
So, like, you get all this education, and you've also got all this military experience. Do you ever have these moments when you're doing, like, total goofball stuff of, like, I know you guys are all having a good time, but do you know what my history is? Do you know what I've been through?
Oh no.
Like
No.
when you're like on New Year's Eve and you're in that like silver suit or whatever, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's fun, Rob Riggle." Are you ever like, "Yeah, but you know what else I do, right?"
Yeah, yes and no, because it's weird. People always want to know how much those streams cross, and
Yeah.
I never crossed those streams ever. They're total opposite ends of the spectrum to me. So I just wear different hats at different times.
Just do-
You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I ended up going over and serving with this unit, and so I'm playing my old boss. I
Now,
guess.
what part of Afghanistan?
Northern Afghanistan. I was in Mazar-e Sharif. So in
Is
the
it
movie,
nice?
12 Strong, that's where they're going to. They're trying to get to Mazar-e Sharif to drive the Taliban out of there. So I got there shortly after they had taken the city.
So did you talk to local warlords? Because I've heard stories that they would actually get information using Viagra, where these guys had no experience with what it would do, and they would be able to go home back and fuck their wives. They would actually talk to people when they had this miracle
I'd
drug.
never heard.
You never heard that? Yeah, I've
Well,
heard
that
Oh.
That was blue clearance.
That's a blue badge.
Yeah.
That's a blue badge for sure.
Yeah, but I've heard that they would give these guys, like, to get information, like, what are you going to give them that they need?
Do you believe that would happen?
There were 3 warlords in the north, okay? There was Moakek, Atta, and Dostum. And Mossad was the guy who kind of held all 3 warlords together and fought the Taliban. 2 days before 9/11, Al-Qaeda assassinated Mossad as payment to the Taliban because the Taliban wanted, the Northern Alliance out of there. So they did that. They assassinated Mossad on September 9th, and then Al-Qaeda attacked us on September 11th. So the Northern Alliance was fragile. It was about to dissolve, and that's when we joined them, and we kept them together long enough to fight the Taliban and drive them out of northern Afghanistan, which gave us a foothold, and then we could push down south and take over the rest.
But aren't they right back in right now? Because those guys never leave. Like, they don't leave the country. So aren't they just kind of going back into where they were? Like, there's no way to, it's almost like if you push water back, as soon as you move, it comes right back in.
It's like digging a sand hole.
Yeah.
It caves back.
Yeah.
Look, it's, and the allegiance over there sometimes is not always guaranteed. I think they tend to go where the strength is. If you're strong, hey, we're on this side. They're bandwagon jumpers. Like everybody's jumping on the Patriots bandwagon a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're winners.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. And you're like, you live in freaking Iowa. What are you connected to the Pats
it's
for?
America's team.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I don't know if what progress is being made. I haven't been over there in a long, long time.
So they got this right. So having you there probably helped because you were there. So they got it right.
Yeah, the guys that are being portrayed like, well, you had Pena in here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they had some of the guys, the Chris Hemsworth character, Michael Shannon's character, they were on set the whole time we were making the movie. So they were there to give all kinds of great advice and I mean, down to the smallest things of this is how we hold our weapon, this is how we talk to one another. And the actors were very serious about getting it right too. So I think it's a pretty accurate portrayal of what happened.
When you've got a reputation for comedy, like, and maybe people don't know your history, I mean, your co-stars might have, but like, do you feel any need to prove to like guys like Michael Pena and Michael Shannon who like have these kind of amazing resumes that you're like, no, I can do this drama
I can do
stuff,
more dramatic stuff.
and I've got a little bit of life experience to go with it. So,
well, look, I don't know if it's like you want to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah.
You just want to do your best, and hopefully they appreciate it.
Yeah.
And like any human being, you don't want to look like an ass.
Right.
You don't want to look like a total fool. So yeah. But I look, when I was in New York, I studied acting as well. It wasn't just improv and comedy or whatever. It was the whole gamut of theater and acting and so I don't know. I feel like I've always felt like I could do it. Show business is tricky. You don't get opportunities. If you play a great funny douchebag, guess what kind of roles you're going to get?
Right.
You're going to play a funny douchebag.
And if you're that guy who's like, I'm not doing any more funny douchebags, like, well, then there's no roles.
Then all of a sudden the phone stops ringing.
Right.
And you're like, well, shit, that sucks. I got a mortgage to pay. Shit.
Yeah.
So you end up playing a comedic douchebag a lot, which is what hello.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine. Don't get me wrong. Like I actually enjoy that role. I think it's super funny. But I was like, I can do other things if someone would just give me a chance. And so I was lucky enough to get a couple opportunities last year to do some more dramatic stuff, and they'll come out this year. I'm still doing a comedy. I'm doing a comedy with Kevin Hart. Comes out in September. So
that's a good guy to do a comedy.
Yeah,
with.
sure is.
Yeah, he does pretty
doing
well in the
okay.
comedy world.
Yeah.
You have a pilot's license you got from when you were in college?
Yeah. That's how I actually kind of started in the Marines. I had my pilot's license when I was an undergrad, and I took a test for the Marines and got a guaranteed flight contract. So I was a theater and film major in college, and also a pilot. When you graduate from University of Kansas with a theater and film major, or any university, you're going to be a waiter for a long time, or I could be Top Gun. And I figured, Top Gun makes out a little better.
Yeah, they're like, you should learn a trade, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to fly military grade jets.
Yeah, exactly.
At that age, you could fly a military jet, like you're like instrument qualified and all that. This is young age. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I wasn't instrument qualified. I was VFR pilot, single engine in undergrad. But when I was I went through. I graduated. I was 22. I was in flight school when I was 23. So I was. Yeah, I mean, you're a young person when you're learning how to fly those things.
So when you're studying acting and you're doing comedy and you're flying planes and stuff, was there when you're a young man like this is the dream? Like this is what I want to do?
Well, that's
or
the
was
thing.
It just, I like all this stuff.
I got to a certain point in flight school when I realized like I liked flying, but I didn't love it. And all the guys that were in my flight class loved it. They'd been dreaming about it since they were kids, and they would talk about it. We'd go out to the bars at night on a Friday night after a long week of, studying and flying, and I'd want to have a couple beers and socialize. And they were over there in the corner talking with their hands, oh man, I was doing this and da. And I was like, wow, they can't even let it go on the weekends. So I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, what am I what is something that I am passionate about and I really, really want to do? And comedy and acting, comedy's always, it's just, I don't know. I'm very passionate about comedy. I love it. So I realized, I looked at my contract and I was like, oh shit, if I pin on these wings, they own me for 8 years after I pin on the wings. So I've already been in for 2. Pin that on, that's 10. I'd only have 10 more years to retirement. I'd be foolish to get out at that point because I'd be a senior captain or a junior major probably. So all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, I'm in 20 years. How did that happen?
Right, man, it's my life.
Yeah,
right.
and I'm 23, 24. So I was like, so I said, okay, I'm not going to finish flight school. I'm going to transfer over to the ground side and become a ground officer because the commitment goes down from 8 years down quite a bit. And that's what I did. So I quit flying. I went over the ground side. And ended up, but the funny thing is, I still ended up staying in for 23 years. So
when you're you're learning to fly and you're doing all that stuff, is there a way they practice eject? There's a scene in Officer and a Gentleman where they're trying to show him the redhead. It might have been David Caruso who was so nervous. He goes, "Is this the hit with the force of a real plane?" He's like, "Son, this is nothing compared to it." Do they try to show you what it feels like to be ejected?
Oh yeah, they actually it's called D-Jet qualifications, and you have to go through it before you can start flight school. It's part of the aviation indoctrination package that they have, and this thing's.
This mic just stinks. They won't. They try to fix it, and
the mic arm.
The arm sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Caruso went down in is called the Dilbert Dunker. And what happens, you slide down the rails, you hit, and you go upside down like that, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to unbuckle yourself and get yourself out of the cockpit and get to the surface. And I did that. You do it with goggles, and you do it blind, and you do it with sight. So they put on like blacked out goggles so you can't see. So it simulates a nighttime crash.
Wow.
And you have to use your points. So you hit. You have one hand up on the here, and you have to trace your arm all the way back down here and find your belt buckle, right? And that releases the 5-point harness. And then once you do that, you have to go back up. And then you grab the top of the cockpit and you pull yourself out and push yourself up, but you follow the air bubbles because air bubbles always go up, but you get discombobulated underwater.
You do, and you're upside down, right?
Yeah, and it's and the water's going up your nose and it's going in your ears through your helmet, and it's very uncomfortable. And
is it hard to do? It's a lot harder than you.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's not hard to do if you just follow the procedures, but staying calm in those situations is not the easiest thing in the world.
Did you see anyone panic?
They do. Yeah, there was a couple people who panicked, but they always have divers underneath there, and they'll let you. They watch you the whole time, and they can see like people bump their heads on stuff, and they get confused about where they're at, especially when they're blacked out.
Sure.
Yeah, because the protocol thing is really interesting because your instincts lie to you, right?
Yeah.
Like, so this thing, you're like, oh, I think I should do this. You're like, nope, even though the
the
protocol
process.
feels wrong in this moment,
Yeah.
I'm just going to do exactly what I was trying to do.
Like, you don't want to trace your arm. You probably want to just reach down, and it goes, no, trace the arm.
Right.
You do they teach you to go by the numbers, do all this stuff. But when you're upside down in water and you feel like you're running out of air, all of that flies out of your brain, and the only thing you're thinking is get out, get out, get out, and that's when the panic sets in. And so you do have to be very calm and methodical about what you do. They also have a helicopter one, right, which is just a cylinder, and you sit in the back, 6 of you, right, just like you're in a helicopter, and it drops, and then it rolls over. Okay.
Wow.
And so you're sitting across from somebody, and as it hits and rolls, the guys across from you, they go underwater first. And you have more time to catch your breath, and then you go under, and then you're trying to get out windows and doors, but you have to use the bench to get out, and it's a very stressful. And then somebody panics out of the 6 and kicks you in the face with their boot, and all of a sudden you're panicking, and now you're flailing. It's high stress stuff, and it is a weeding out process.
I was going to say, if I had those like skill sets that you're trained for and that you develop, I don't care if like comedy and acting was my dream or anything. I would need to worm that into every conversation, every action. Like that would be like if I could do that, I would want to make sure the whole world at all times knew that I had that ability.
Yeah, on a plane, if this thing flips over the way. So when you're following your breathing at night, when you have to follow the bubbles, do you have to put your hands so you can feel them because you can't see them?
No, I don't recall that ever being something they taught us, but that's a great idea, actually, to be honest with you. No, on that one, you refer more to your points.
Okay.
Your points of contact. Because when you're in the helicopter, your point of contact's to the bench that you're sitting on. And that's how you always know. And then
What's the ejection like, though?
So the ejection seat, they actually have an ejection seat on rails. So it's about a one-story rail. And, it's as advertised. You say eject 3 times, eject, 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 and on the third one, you pull, and it launches you up this rail, and you feel the compression and it gets you ready for it. Obviously, you can't eject out of a real plane,
right?
So they have the ejection seat.
Eject, eject, eject. You have to say it 3 times?
3 times. Because, look, if on the third time, it gives you, one, it's a preparatory order. So if you're in a plane, you got to, get a front seat and a back seat guy. And the pilot, because the pilot's the only one who can make that call, really. He's like, eject, eject, eject. It's a preparatory order letting you know, shit, I'm about to be launched out of a plane that's going 400 miles an hour that way, and I'm about to go 200 miles an hour that way. So I'm about to, it knocks cavities out of teeth. It really does.
Really?
The G-forces are so bad. People who have ejected come back about an inch shorter than when they started flying. Yeah, it really does mess with you. So it's not a cool thing to eject.
No.
You eject, and
it's just better than being in a plane crash.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're
slightly
alive.
better than being in a plane crash.
But when you hear that third eject, you're about to ride the lightning.
Let me ask you, I've always wondered this too, when you're ejected out of a plane, how, obviously when they're yelling eject, you have to put your hands a certain way so your arm doesn't get ripped off.
Yes.
How do your legs and your feet not get caught on something as you're going out?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
They actually have hooks on you. You hook into your flight suit, right? And when you pull that ejection seat, okay, those cords go and everything it pulls your legs in. And so everything gets tucked in tight to the seat, and then you're gone.
And the fucking top of the
canopy.
The canopy comes off the plane in a nanosecond. That's amazing to me how, of course, rest in peace, Goose. It's my favorite part of Top Gun.
Right.
But that's amazing to me that can happen. You can get sucked in a second.
Yeah.
And they did a good job in that particular movie of explaining why, because normally if you are flying and you hit that ejection seat, you're going, hundreds of miles an hour, that canopy is going to, it's gone.
Sure.
But if you're in a flat spin, you're going down like this, but it's spinning like this, and so there's like drafting. You know how guys get on bicycles and ride behind a semi?
Is it like corkscrewing down?
Yeah, so it's no wind resistance. So when they hit the ejection seat in a flat spin, the canopy just kind of hovers above the aircraft. It doesn't rip away.
Wow.
Because it's a rock going straight down, and so there's obviously a little drafting. And so when they did that and ejected, he went into the canopy. That's based on a real incident that happened, yeah.
So have they fixed that? Have they done something?
Yes, they've done that now where the canopy doesn't just eject out, it goes back.
So when you do that, how does it not, again, it's a stupid question, but when you're getting ejected, I'll always be afraid, what if it knocked you into the tail of the plane? Or what if, what I mean?
That's why the ejection seat has enough juice it has the rockets. It will send you, it gives you enough clearance. It launches you into the sky enough.
Oh, there's rockets under it.
Yes.
I wondered what actually made it. I mean, it couldn't just be a spring. Yeah. I'm like, how does that not ever happen by mistake?
Yeah.
A G-force spring.
Yeah, because when you get into the aircraft, you turn on the ejection seat.
You do?
Yeah, so you arm the ejection seat.
So when you're flying, are there times, obviously if you're going to crash, you feel like spiraling out of control, but is there a time when you're flying where there's a missile, something's been fired at your plane, where you will actually go, we have enough time to eject it when there's no way to avoid this? Will they actually avoid being strikes like that, or you can't?
No, it's never happened to me, but the pilots that I've talked to, and any pilot, generally speaking, you're in charge of your aircraft until you can't be in charge of your aircraft, meaning there's never going to be a time when, if a missile's coming at you, you're never going to go, we're out of here. You're going to do everything you can to avoid it.
Okay.
And you're going to try to fight that missile, meaning you're going to try to dogfight it, you're going to try to evade it, you're going to put out countermeasures. You're never out of the fight until you're out of the fight, meaning your aircraft is no longer flyable.
Have you been in a Harrier jet?
No, but I have many friends that were Harrier pilots.
They seem really fascinating too, because they can just kind of stop and hover and then take off. I mean, they
defy physics. Look, it's when the thrust is underneath you, it's in a fixed wing aircraft, it's bad. I think it's like standing on top of a ball.
Right.
Right? Because that's how unstable
Trying
it
to
is.
balance it.
Right. Now, if the thrust is above you, like a helicopter, you have more stability. And it's just physics. It doesn't seem right, you know.
Do you
when
think-
you fly, you have air going over your wings. That's what keeps you that keeps you aloft.
Do you think they use alien technology?
I'm sure it is.
You think
I'm sure
so?
it is.
Okay.
Well, you know, it's
There
funny
it
you
is.
asked that before
There it is.
we have to let Rob go in 2 minutes. Before you
Yeah.
go, there was that the only thing that convinces me of UFOs sometimes is when pilots are confused by what they're seeing, because you guys
Yes.
understand so much about how to fly and how it works. And there was that one released where these two pilots are flying and they're like, "What the? Did you see that footage?"
I didn't see that, but I've heard so many accounts of pilots not being able to identify what they're seeing, and I trust them. I don't think they're crazy pilots. You have to realize how hard it would be to come out and say, "I saw something I can't identify."
Well, do you think it's more likely alien, or do you think it's more likely government things that people don't have clearance for?
Probably, I think.
Or
I mean,
both.
I always try to find the most real
Right.
explanation because, you know, yeah, conspiracies are out there. I don't buy into a lot of them, but I do think there is a lot of experimental aircraft out there that, of course, we don't know anything about. I mean, look, they had the Blackbird, the SR-70, 71. That was 1965 technology that they finally retired in 1991. What is that, 30 years?
Yeah.
You know, and for a long time, we didn't even know it existed, but it could fly 3,000 miles an hour at 70, you know, it could fly over Russia before Russia even had a chance to respond to it. So we had this, that's 65 technology. What do you think we got now?
Right.
So you think we have things now, though, that my thing is like, do you think we have things now, like that's them tracking something that they see? Do you think we have things now that a pilot wouldn't recognize as a military aircraft, even if it's
Yeah.
like he wouldn't recognize the way it moved?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that's quite possible. I think, I think there is unexplainable phenomena that happens, but I don't know what it is.
But do you think that if a pilot's tracking, they're going, "What the hell is that thing?" The chances are it's not something the military made, because a pilot will at least understand the movement of it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. When you hear about things that defy the laws of physics, that's when it gets into a weird place where you're like, well, God, I don't know what that is. And do we have the technology to defy physics? I don't know.
And then they go, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah,
you
apparently
don't-
we do.
You don't need to know.
And then they say,
Yeah.
look into this light.
Yeah, whoop.
Yeah, take your green badge and go talk to Yellow Badge.